Have you ever considered that the world's most formidable empire was literally brought to its knees by merchants, artisans, and makeshift street barricades? Well, this document completely shifts the perspective on the limits of conventional military power.
Welcome to Strategic Labs. Like and subscribe for more strategic insights. Today, we're tearing into a massive historical blind spot, asking a pretty crucial question. How exactly did decentralized, everyday civilian militias manage to completely neutralize British imperial supremacy back in the early 19th century?
To figure that out, we're running a strategic autopsy on the British invasions of the Rio de la Plata from 1806 to 1807. We'll hit the baseline strategy, then three major disruptions: urban labyrinths, an unseen insurgency, and a massive logistical collapse, before wrapping up with the inevitable retreat. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. The Baseline Strategy and Imperial Ambitions in the South Atlantic. Let's look at exactly what British planners thought they were going to achieve here.
So the geographical context here is absolutely crucial. Back at the turn of the 19th century, the viceroyalty of the Rio de la Plata was this massive estuarian system. It was basically Spain's maritime VIP gateway to the entire South American interior. The British goal? Super direct. Seize this critical commercial hub, specifically Buenos Aires, to completely wreck Spanish mercantilism, tap into all that silver, and set up a strategic roadblock against French influence during the Napoleonic Wars. They wanted a launch pad for the whole continent. But here's the kicker. British High Command was operating on some wildly flawed, honestly hubristic assumptions. They figured the Spanish colonial administration was just way too weak to push back, and they genuinely thought the local Criollo populations would literally welcome them with open arms as liberators. Plus, they just assumed their standard linear European military tactics would pacify the region with zero friction. Yeah, big mistake.
Which brings us to Part 2, Disruption 1, Urban Labyrinths and the Total Failure of Conventional Warfare.
This is where the tactical mismatch becomes incredibly glaring. You've got the British Army, right? Trained for open-field European battles, standing in neat lines, firing synchronized musket volleys, textbook stuff. But then you drop them into Buenos Aires, suddenly, those strict linear tactics are entirely useless. The tight, labyrinth-like streets and narrow alleys turned their biggest strengths into fatal weaknesses. They couldn't line up, and they couldn't even see who was shooting at them.
The source text actually points out that British infantry and artillery struggled to maneuver within these constrained urban spaces, making them highly vulnerable to enfilading fire from the rooftops. So instead of dominating an open field, British columns got isolated and picked apart by defenders who intimately knew every single corner and alleyway of their city. The British were basically fighting blind in a maze.
Moving on to Part 3, Disruption 2, Unseen Insurgency and the Reconquista of Buenos Aires.
Remember how the British expected everyone to just roll over? Well, instead, they got Santiago de Liniers. He was a French-born naval officer working for Spain, and he orchestrated an absolutely brilliant counteroffensive. He didn't just rally a mob. He took the local Criollo population and the gauchos and forged them into a highly disciplined, completely lethal insurgency.
Just look at how everyday citizens were weaponized into an organized defense network. You had merchants and artisans acting as urban militias, building street barricades and running sniper cover. Out in the country, gauchos were relentless, completely choking off rural supply routes. And underneath all of that, civilian informants, regular residents feeding intelligence to Liniers and sabotaging logistics at every single turn. The sheer resourcefulness of the locals is off the charts. They built these massive barricades around key spots like the Cabildo using carts, barrels, literally just household furniture. They're running hit-and-run attacks out of alleys, taking shots at sentries from second-story windows, and hitting isolated British detachments with stunning coordination. The British had zero playbook for a 360-degree, highly motivated neighborhood insurgency.
And that creates the perfect storm for Part 4, Disruption 3, Logistical Collapse and the Disintegration of Operational Cohesion.
This was a total cascading failure. Step 1, British columns get fragmented in those narrow alleys. Step 2, local militias just sever their supply and communication lines. Step 3, those dispersed British units are suddenly encircled and completely besieged inside the city. And finally, Step 4, command cohesion just shatters. With no communication, these isolated units are stranded without food, without ammo, and without medical care, right in the sweltering heat.
There's a quote that really captures this nightmare perfectly. The physical act of withdrawal itself became another significant episode. coordinating as best as possible under fire through the same streets. They were so depleted and psychologically drained from this invisible enemy that just trying to back out meant fighting through a gauntlet of hostile city blocks.
All of which leads us directly into Part 5, the inevitable retreat and the stark limits of imperial power.
Look at how insanely fast this whole thing unraveled. In 1806, the initial British capture looked like a walk in the park, but just weeks later, massive civilian mobilization kicks off under Liniers. Fast forward to the summer of 1807, and urban skirmishes are out of control, logistics are totally shot. By August 1807, a massive, multi-pronged militia offensive forces the British to completely surrender and literally run for the ships.
So, what's the big takeaway here? It's that having the best guns and the biggest army means absolutely nothing if you don't understand the local socio-political dynamics and the sheer complexity of an urban environment. The British brought open field line infantry to a vicious street fight. They didn't adapt, and they paid the ultimate price for underestimating the willpower of the locals.
It all boils down to strategic humility. The British defeat wasn't just a bad day on the battlefield. It proves that top-tier military tech can be totally canceled out by people who know their own streets, control the logistics, and refuse to quit. So the next time you see a modern superpower engaging in an asymmetrical conflict, ask yourself, what invisible labyrinths are they blindly walking into? This is just a preview. For the full deep dive, check out our long-form explainer on the channel. See you in the next one.